Hello and welcome guys, my name is Badger and welcome to another Horus Heresy era painting video. And in this video, we'll be painting up the Iron Hands. Without further ado, let's just get stuck into it. Alright, we're going to start off with Lead Belcher. This is going to be a slightly different technique from before, so what we're going to do is we are going to do a base coat of a metallic paint. I'm going with Lead Belcher. What we're going to do, you can use a variety of different colors to get different ending effects, but this is a good mid-tone, I guess, for us to start with. We will bump up a bit of brightness later on, but not yet. This is Iron Hands. I was tempted to just go with regular black armor, but I did want to do something slightly different as well, so we're going to go with a sort of dark metallic black metal kind of effect. So we will be using contrast paint once we put on a couple of layers of this. Thin it down, wait for it to dry, add a couple more layers of paint, and you'll be good to go. And this is the paint we're using. Black Templar. Lovely. All right, so we are going to put this on. I generally like to do one sort of armor section at a time rather than just hose the complete thing down with paints and end up with weird bits of thicker paint, etc, etc. So I like to do the lower leg first, make sure that it hasn't pulled too much. I know it's slightly off camera there, before moving on to the sort of upper thigh section, also making sure that the paint isn't pooling too much there and causing any sort of weird parts of painting. And then now we're back to the Lead Belcher. Once that is dried, we're going to do the edge highlights. I think I did probably slightly too chunky an edge highlight for this. It really depends on personal preference. I think going back and doing this, I would probably be slightly... I probably might want to be slightly finer with the edge highlights, but this does get the job done. We're just going to use edge highlights of Lead Belcher, and we are going to highlight further up after this, but we do want a nice shiny edge, and this is how we're going to do it to sort of get that metal, dark metal effect. Getting the upper inner thigh, trying to trace those panel lines as best we can. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Now we're going to move on to Runefang Steel. This is the proper edge highlight. So look at that brush. Try and run the edge, the side of the brush along the edges of the armor where possible. Obviously, that's not always going to be a viable solution. You're going to have to use the point of the brush, but it's definitely easier like this. And having a brush in decent condition is also even easier, but I like to make things even more complicated for myself, so you should see the variety of brushes that I have available to achieve that effect. And moving on to Skaven Blight Dinge, that is going to be the color that we use to paint the undersuit. Thin it down a fair amount, a couple of coats is going to be required. Make sure it gets into all of those little grooves and bits and pieces that we've got on the undersuit. As I have said before, I'm going to slowly start to try and use just GW paints when painting Games Workshop miniatures, rather than a whole array of paints that I have available to me. It's just going to make things easier both for myself and for people watching, rather than going all over the place with a variety of different paints. So I hope that's okay with folks. We are working that Skaven Blight Dinge watered down into all of the crevices and cracks of the undersuit, getting a nice even coat before moving on to the next step. Before moving on to Nuln Oil. You know where that's going, folks. Oh yes. That is going all over the undersuit. Making sure we get that. You can have a damp, clean brush to hand if you make any mistakes, just to sort of clean up any excess, etc. That does help a huge amount. Definitely a good thing to have ready. Trying to get that all over the undersuit, making sure the black gives a decent coat and definitely gets into all of the wrinkles, all the crevices, etc. Just like that. We're not going to highlight it. As you can see, it looks good just as it is. We're going to work on the eye lenses, so we're going to start off with Sotek Green. We are going to sort of get that. We're verging off camera there. We're going to get, oh, hello. Yeah, we're going to get that into the eye sockets. We want to try and leave a bit of black above and below the lens itself. We want it sort of framed by a bit of black paint. If you made a mistake, I would probably go back and fix it as late as possible with just some thin down black paint, and that will be absolutely fine. I'm going to try and get the left-hand lens. I normally just try and concentrate on one lens at a time. Not this time. So using Temple Guard Blue, we are going to do the main chunk of the eye lens. We're going to work generally from the center of the face mask outwards. We do want to continue doing a sort of stripe framed by that black as per the previous step. So just a couple of layers. If mistakes are made, it's not a disaster. You can tidy it up shortly. All right, let's continue. Okay, now we're moving on to Baharoth Blue. This is going to be basically the final stage, bar one. Going to get the very center, or the very center of the helmet, the inner part of the eye lenses with that color. I think, are we going to do the left lens as well? I think we are right there. There we go. I think I do, in fact, need to go back and fix that with some black paint. I think that's exactly what I did right before this bit, this cut. Yeah, mistakes are easily made, but you can easily fix them. We've got some white scar. We're going to use that for the corner dot of each lens in the sort of darker recessed part of it. I use P3 Morrow White, but I was just showing you white scar as an option if you do not have access to that color, that paint. It was a very hot day that I was painting this. The paint was drying out. It was being a bit of a nightmare to get a singular dot down, but there we go. We got there in the end. As you can see, it looks pretty good on both sides. All right, there it is. And I'm pointing at something. Oh, there's the rivets, I believe. Balthazar Gold, this is a new paint for me. We are putting that on the straps. As I said, yeah, as I just said, it's a new paint for me. I wasn't quite sure how this was going to look, but it's definitely a good base for brass, bronze, etc. We are going for a sort of brassy, kind of bronzy shoulder strap rather than just more steel. I thought trying to add a different color in might be a little break things up a little bit at least. So get those shoulder straps, get them nicely painted, get that color into the crevices, and then we can put the following stage in, which is Agrak's Earthshade. Make sure those bronzy parts get a good bit of coverage, make sure it gets into all the crevices, and then obviously wait for it to dry as per usual. Don't forget the back right there. And we're going to wait however long it takes for that to dry before moving on to the next stage. I'm going to paint that as well, apparently on camera. Well done, Badger. Sycorax Bronze is the next paint we're going to use. And yeah, it's definitely a color. Well done. All right, so we're going to use this as a highlight for these straps. I think I probably may have put a bit too much on. So just put a bit of it on. It's definitely a brighter color. And here's Lead Belcher. Look at that. Lovely. And we are going to use that to paint the rivets. I think that's what I was pointing at before. We want to get just the upper sort of facing parts of these. We're going to use that Black Templar wash that we did earlier as part of the sort of shadowing. So we don't need to do a null noil stage for this. It's already built in. So that's what we want to do. We want it mostly dark. Some people may disagree with those shoulder straps. I think they probably could do with a bit of improvement, but I think they also do look quite good. It sort of adds a bit of something new, which is quite nice. And here is the finished miniature, as you can see. I am very happy with how this miniature looks. Obviously, it's doesn't have any iconography on the shoulder, but obviously you can do that with the transfer. And now we're actually in focus. I'm even more happy. You could check out the Bolter video. Hopefully I'll put a link of it in the top right of the screen right now. That was done on a separate video. They're very nice. As I said before, there are two chapters which have black armor, so Raven Guard and Dark Angels. So I wanted to go with something slightly different with this one. Hence the metallic sort of base coat and contrast. We are going to come back and do something similar in future, so be ready for that. Folks, thanks very much for hanging out with me today as we have painted up these Iron Hands. This is in fact the first one that I've ever painted up, so I was struggling over the recipes a little bit. I did come down on the side of recipes that I would like to do if I had more of them to paint. Hopefully you enjoyed this recipe. We will be doing the sort of contrast over metallic paint thing a few more times while painting up these Horus Heresy miniatures. Certainly Thousand Suns and potentially one of the other legions that we've yet to do. So do bear that in mind. And hopefully by now you've liked and commented saying what your favourite Heresy era legion is. And also hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss out on the next video. Thank you and goodbye.